Hey there, YouTube. Got a special guest today.
I don't know how special.
Well,
Well, special in air quotes.
special. All right, Joel, what are we talking about today?
Today
I
we're
think you brought something interesting,
I thought it'd be fun
something
to
good.
talk about. We're
Yeah.
gonna talk about recoil impulse in handguns, but it's not in the way that people think. Most people think like, tell me what bullet weight or what recoil spring to buy. Like, oh, what pound recoil spring should I put in my gun? That doesn't really tell the whole tale because the guns feel differently compared to like we could talk about how it returns, more snap, less snap, it feels numb. There's a bunch of different terms, yeah?
Yes, I think a lot of, well, I know on my channel there's been a lot of discussion in the last year, maybe 2 years, about how the gun reciprocates. So I pull the trigger, the gun does something, does some stuff, kicks out the old case, puts in a new case.
Hmm.
You know, it does the whole deal. And the way that it does that job, or how the slide reciprocates and does the auto loading function, that to me is is one of those like very important factors, obviously, in how a gun feels.
Hmm.
But it feels a little bit like black magic or witchcraft actually
Yes.
articulating what the hell's going on here. And so I think the first point to make is that different guns, like they're all different. Um, Different types of guns are different. So things that may make sense on like this single action 2011 are going to be very, very different on the striker fired Glock. Like
Hmm.
this needs a heavier recoil spring to push it into battery because of the way the gun's operated, the
Hmm.
gun's designed. But this one works different. So it's like we can't directly compare things like recoil spring weight from one platform to another. Whereas in other ways, there's obviously a very direct comparison you could do with ammunition. But recoil spring weight's tough to compare. The slides are different weights. The travel is different
Hmm.
on them. It feels different. It feels difficult to even compare these things. So let's start off with what do I want the gun to do and how do I want it to do it?
Well,
Right?
yeah.
That's what that's the big question. So um, I think that the big I wouldn't call it, it's not really a debate, but there's a couple of methods or a couple of things or sensations that people can find very preferable. I would say many people prefer the gun to be pushy but not very violent,
Hmm.
right? So it'll the slide comes out, it does, fires the shot, the slide reciprocates forward, and you would describe the sensation as pushy but not necessarily violent, kind of like that. Whereas other people prefer a fast reciprocation um, type of feeling, but that's going to be a little more violent or a little more snappy. So it's like, and then it's like, and the job's done, and the gun's back in battery and back on target.
Well, let's talk about this in the way you just illustrated this.
Sure.
Because pushy, I could also take that as like slow feeling. So the sensation behind the gun. Well, I'll talk
Mhm.
about some stuff. We both shot the PDPs, the Walther with the long stroke guide rod.
Yes.
Okay, so it in the hand, it feels
I would
like
actually call that
soft.
one slushy.
Sure,
I wouldn't
we
even
could use
say
all
it's
kinds
that
of words.
pushy. Yeah.
So it feels very like the recoil. If you measure it on a scale, it's not very much recoil.
Hmm.
But when you're behind the gun, it feels like it takes a long time
Yeah, it feels
to,
slow.
yeah. So you could say that's pushy or it's slow, and people would like if you looked at how many, however you'd measure this, however many inch pounds or whatever your recoil is, the number might be quite low. But behind the gun, it feels like it takes forever, and it's like I'd
Yes.
be waiting on the gun.
Well, I mean, when you're measuring any of these things, to be fair, it'll be like you might say, "Oh, this gun reciprocates fast," and if you looked at it on high speed footage of it, it would be a tiny fraction
A
of a
hundredth of a
second
second
is
different or
the
something.
difference, but
Yeah.
in terms of feel, it can be very dramatic. So yes, there's that. There's like, what? How do you prefer the gun to? How do you prefer it to reciprocate? How do you prefer it feel in
Hmm.
recoil? And then how do you get it to feel that way? So
Yeah.
that's the first question. I'll put out a hot take for you there. What I've observed is that less experienced or newer shooters prefer to mitigate the recoil sensation as much as possible. So
Yes.
they're going to want the like a slow feeling gun
Hmm.
to them will feel soft. So
Yes.
they're going to like that more than I think people that are like whatever higher speed, better, whatever, like
More
they're
experienced.
more experienced. They're gonna they I've seen more of a tendency towards the gun reciprocating faster, and less emphasis on it being soft. Not saying anybody wants it to be violent or push them around, but if it snaps a little bit, but it feels like it's coming back right in the same place, like they'll like that.
Well, your Titans like that.
Yeah, the Atlas Titan, the Atlas stuff is like that.
So it's when you're shooting, I just look and it just returns right where I'm looking. I'm like, oh,
Yes, but
cool.
you wouldn't necessarily describe the gun as really soft.
No, but if I do everything right and I laser focus, I
Hmm.
feel like the gun's always there waiting on me. So I like that.
Hmm.
But somebody else might say this gun kicks a bit more. You could put a
Yes.
lighter recoil spring or whatever, a gizmo to like kind of slow that down, but it'll feel like it's not as snappy in my hand.
Yes. Other builders for 2011s are just going to make them a lot heavier to soak up the recoil,
Mhm.
but or whatever. Okay, so sorry. Let's kind of put a lot
No,
of stuff
there's a
out
lot of
there.
stuff to talk about.
There's a lot of elements to talk about here. So there's certain ways the guns can be set up. All right. So what variables are we going to play with here, Joel?
Well, we could talk about compensators or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, maybe let's talk about the Glock 47 to 17.
Sure.
Is that maybe that's a good place to start?
I love 47s.
Okay, so I have a need to get more Glocks, so I bought a 47 this week, and I shot that next to my 17.
Yeah.
And in shooting them, just a couple hundred rounds, just doing some doubles, some reactive shooting, I could immediately tell when I was like, if I'd laser focus, I felt like the 47 just snapped back. I
Mm-hmm.
don't even have an aftermarket trigger in the gun yet. Completely out of the box, all I did was just mount an optic. I didn't even change the striker spring. And I already like the way it shoots over my 17.
What did you like about it?
That I just like, I laser focused there, and the sight was just always, it was like immediately with factory everything other than an optic that I'd added.
Yeah.
It just felt like I just looked and it just snapped right back where I was
Yeah,
looking.
very well balanced. And
I'm like, holy crap.
the key with the 47 is this, it's the recoil spring. You guys should probably all know this, that it's the same recoil system that they'll put in a Glock 19.
Hmm.
And putting it in the longer slide Glock 47, it's going to change the feel of it dramatically. And in our opinion, it makes it a lot better. So as you see there, like a relatively minor change, a spring change can pretty dramatically alter the feel of your gun.
And in all of our Glocks, they're factory springs, like just the factory recoil springs.
Yeah,
It's
I
not,
understand, but Jake,
but the
you,
timing and the length of the spring and
but
all the stuff.
but then what we're talking about here is like somebody's like, well, could I make a 17 feel that way?
Maybe.
Yeah, so one friend of mine, I shot with him a couple days ago. He has a Glock 34, which is the same recoil spring as the 17. So he has a Glock. It's just a longer slided Glock. So he's shooting his 34, which I don't like anymore because I shoot the 47, so those reciprocate faster. But he put in a heavy guide rod and changed the spring weight.
Okay.
And what he got was that the gun is a little more front heavy, so it's not doesn't snap back. It reciprocates. I wouldn't say it's a little bit faster than like a faster feeling than a factory 34.
Okay.
And I would say it's soft-ish, right? So he changed the properties of the recoil spring and changed the guide rod and made it feel not just like a 47, but he changed the feel pretty dramatically from a factory Glock 34. And that's again, it's difficult to talk about this stuff because there's so many variables you can change, and it can have a pretty dramatic effect on what the gun's doing.
Okay. Well, that's a factory Glock or a factory gun. What about a compensator?
You could add a compensator to a gun. To me, those that's probably the shit.
Because this changes a lot too.
It does.
Because comps can be violent and sharp.
Yeah.
They can make the gun feel very numb or kind of, I don't know, not like what, mute be a way of saying it, where it's just like it deletes all the recoil and doesn't really move.
Yeah, so I mean, if you add a ramjet to a Glock 47, for example, it's going to make it louder. Like you'll know, I mean, you notice it being louder. It's like, oh, it feels like it's blast. There's more blast. There's not really. It's just kind of directing it up, and it makes it feel louder. Um, but then what I experience is the sight does all the same stuff in the same time. It just rises up less. So instead of the dot going like this, it goes like that. if that makes sense.
Hmm.
That's how a comp works for me on that gun. But then it depends a lot on the design of the comp,
Uh-huh.
what you're doing. It can change the properties in other ways. So for example, on the Staccato XC, it's got a really aggressive single port comp that's pretty heavy,
Mhm.
sits out in front of the gun, um, and it dulls the recoil with the weight. It does it with the direction of the gas, and I would say it makes the gun feel very, very soft, and I will say slushy because it's not that fast returning thing. It feels slow when it's returning, and
Mhm.
I articulate that as slushy.
Yeah, talking about the Parker Mountain guns, I've shot a bunch, and you've shot my guns a fair bit.
Hmm.
The Walthers on the PDPs, the steel frame gun, it almost deletes the recoil so much that it's almost like kind of what numb. I mean, I just hold the gun still and like don't do anything because there's really not much feedback from the gun
That's the thing with that gun is just don't do anything.
because there's like no feedback from the gun. Then I think the polymer gun you liked better with the
Hmm.
two port comp because
I
the
did like
comp.
the polymer better.
So I'm putting words in your mouth. The comp helps with the
Yes.
recoil, but it still has a little bit of feeling and a little like giddy up, so you don't.
Yes.
It's not completely numb. Is that fair?
Yeah, so I like the polymer frame better. The metal frame you have to keep wet to make it run, and I don't like the feel of it as much. And then with all the weight on the gun, shooting the double port comp setup, I felt that the gun was too heavy, too numb, too slushy. I just can't, you know what I mean? Like
But
I
you're,
don't like the feel of
and the
it.
next person might try that and be like,
Yeah,
bro,
they'd be
this is
like, this
the
is the
best gun
deal.
I've ever shot in my life, and I enjoy shooting it too. Like it's so it's yeah, it's like it's all about preference.
Yes.
So how do you tell people like what should somebody look for? How should they set up their gun or parts? We could talk about bullet weights if you want to, because that's kind of
Well, I think the first thing is until people even like know what like like even know all the variables we're talking about, they shouldn't do any of this stuff. Like you should probably not worry about this if you're new to shooting.
I
You
agree.
should not worry about this and try not to even try not to even listen to this. Like don't even turn off the video, delete it from your brain. You like just don't worry about this right away because what you should do is like get an appreciation for how the gun feels yourself. Just take a, whatever pistol you start with, just take it and shoot it with normal like like ball ammunition, FMJ, probably 9 mil. What I mean,
Hmm.
buy the ammo, shoot it, and like do not worry about this that much. And over time, like you start to get a little bit of experience and you'll understand what matters. So for example, does it matter if you buy 115 or 124 grain bullets for shooting 9 millimeter? Not really. For
No,
most brands, I could buy the 115 and buy the same brand 124 right next to it. I cannot tell the difference, or it's very difficult to tell a difference.
but the next person might say I want to shoot 147s because that's the softest one and that's the only stuff they want
Right.
to
I
buy.
mean, I think they're saying that because of stuff they heard, not necessarily like what is reality. Because a lot of like factory loaded 147s they're not really that soft compared to maybe 115 offerings from the same company. So anyway, like what I would do is get enough experience to where you're like, yes, you've shot 115s and you've shot 124s and you've shot a Glock and you've shot,
Hmm.
a few other guns and you kind of just get a feel for it, like the differences in that stuff. I would not, when you start, get a gun and then start modifying the setup because that's going to be modifying it to suit someone else's preferences in pretty much every case. You don't really know. You're just somebody who you're like, oh well, this guy's good. Like, tell me the thing to put in the
Hmm.
gun. Yeah, like I would just not do that. I would not start fucking around with this stuff until you actually have shot a little bit and you have some sense of preference for what you're even trying to accomplish.
How about this? Until the gun is showing you a problem that you want to create a solution to.
Yes. No, I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable. Um, one guy I had this happen in a class where I don't know, this is a couple weeks ago. A guy who seemed pretty proficient. He's shooting his gun, a Staccato P, as I recall. So he's shooting a Staccato P, and when we were doing doubles and backing up, and he's shooting pretty well, and there's a couple a little below the aiming reference, and he's like, hey man, when this gun tracks back down, it's got it wants to go below the reference and then pop back up, and I'm looking like, all right, Staccato P, yep. Did you have the factory recoil spring in there? He's like, yes. And so that's where I can say, it's like, you know what? The factory recoil setup on that thing it's almost like it wants to over return the gun or it's pushing it back down below the reference. Like you're seeing the gun doing that, like that is the way the gun is set up.
Mhm.
And it's like for that guy on that day, that's what he needed to hear because he's struggling to return the gun perfectly back to center. And I mean, based on my own training and experience and like some experience with that gun, I can like, all right, like the way that one is set up, like it's going to a little bit tend for you to drive it under the reference when you're shooting at like 15 or 20 yards. Like this in your situation in particular, like I would look at changing that spring or making some other change to the setup so the gun does not tend to do that thing. That what you're talking about?
Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So yeah, so if there's specifically an issue, then I would address it. But until you can even identify that, again, you're just setting your gun up to to dance to someone else's tune, really.
Yeah. The other thing I would caution against, people want to like reduce the recoil spring weight so much, they
Mm-hmm.
end up having problems. So in my experience, anything under 10 pounds, the life of it drops pretty quickly. So
Yeah, I think that's probably
yeah, I was like, prove me wrong, bro. Like a 7 pound recoil spring, for example, those springs start to get pretty short pretty quick. So it's probably something you'll be replacing more often compared to 12, 14, 16s. They tend to last longer. And obviously, like whatever recoil spring, everybody's like, oh, every 2,000 rounds you should replace it.
oh, that's
But
crazy.
I know it is.
If you're changing the recoil spring every 2,000 rounds, I guarantee you're doing something wrong.
But anyway, like the light springs, they take a set faster. They can cause reliability issues. So I like staying in that like closer to whatever the manufacturer normally puts in the
I
gun.
mean, yeah, it's going to depend on the design of the gun too. Like for like a Glock, like Glock 17, I've not gone under a 15-pound spring myself.
No,
If
because
they
it
come with a 17, I can put a 15 in there, but I also know they're going to go to the 13. If it's dirty or
it won't
there's
go into
whatever,
battery.
yeah, they may have issues putting it into battery. So it's like it's pretty easy to just to start with. I wouldn't fuck with anything,
Yeah,
and I would get a sense for how your gun works. Identify a specific thing that you're trying to change.
I
That's good
agree.
advice, man. Look, we winded up with good advice here.
We tried. You're
All right,
just as surprised as I am.
yeah. Well, you guys got any questions, comments, or more about this gun reciprocation banter? Put it down below.